Hello everyone. Welcome to Brighton Digital Festival and the BDF Sessions. I'm Alli Beddoes, Artistic Director and CEO at Lighthouse, which is an arts charity based in Brighton, and is actually one of the organisations that set up Brighton Digital Festival with Wide Sussex and Clear Left 10 years ago. So we're celebrating the 10th anniversary this year. And it's a real honour to be directing the BDF programme, which has over 50 activities taking place in the city and beyond. The festival has grown and adapted and adjusted over the years according to needs and specialisms. However, it has remained a community-driven platform that supports and encourages people across the city to experience and explore digital culture. So with this in mind, we're running a tech amnesty, and this is a call to you to donate your old devices, bring them along to Lighthouse. We're on Kensington Street, and we're working with a company called Tech Take Back, who updates and clean all of the equipment. Just bring your laptops, your tablets and your phones. We don't want your hoovers. And we will make sure that this tech will be distributed across the city to people that don't own that technology. And this is important to us for many, many reasons, but the driving force of that is for future iterations of the programme for the festival to make sure that everybody in the city can enjoy the work that we do. So we're almost halfway through, and today we're delighted to be here to do this BDF session. It's a series of curated talks delivered by experts in the city and beyond, Katie. And yesterday we talked about circular economy and genuine influential marketing. For the rest of the week we're talking digital well-being and the rise and future of NFTs, so check us out on the website. But I'm really, really happy about this session for the programme. We're talking about neurodivergence in the digital space. So questions like, how can we build safe digital spaces? How can we make positive change to the environments that we hold? Let's talk about the challenges that are faced on a daily basis and share knowledge on how we can make these spaces for places for people to thrive in, for all people to thrive in. And this session should mean a lot to all of us, whoever we are, because we have a responsibility to share that effort and adjust the spaces that we hold together and to know those tools that we need to navigate. And so I just wanted to quote Atif Chowdhury, who joined us yesterday for the circular economy talk. And he quoted James Baldwin, and he said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." And I think that's a really good thing to sort of take forward. We're joined by some fantastic speakers for this panel. I'm going to go this way round. We've got James Dempster, who's joining us on screen. Wait, give us a wave. Poor James has got COVID, so that's why he's there, but it's amazing that you're here. Thank you so much. We've got Katie Donovan Adekambi, who's come all the way from Bristol. Thank you. Bianca Farisi, correct pronunciation? Farisi. Oh, I got it wrong. And it's being chaired by the awesome Andrea Anderson. I just wanted to say a special thanks to our sponsors and supporters of BDF, who without their support this festival would not have happened. So Brandwatch, MPB, Uplift, Oban International, Brilliant Noise and Plus X Brighton. Thanks also to Ironwork Studios. Thank you all of you. It's amazing to hold this space online and in real life. It's a bit of a treat. And also to the camera crew, thank you so much. You'll hear them clicking and waving now, so that's great. I'm handing over. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Alli. That was a brilliant introduction, and I love that quote about facing I can't remember the quote entirely, but to introduce myself, hello, I'm Andrea Anderson, and I am very proud to introduce myself as an autistic woman. And we are all very proud of our neurodivergence. So, again, to introduce the panel, I'm joined by three brilliant people. Bianca Farisi, who is Head of Visual Arts at a school in East Sussex. We've got Katie Donovan Adekambi, and Katie is the founder of a inclusion and cohesion learning organisation called BCOCO. And Katie's travelled from Bristol, so we're delighted to have her here today. And James, on screen, truly modern, with both mixes of live streaming and in-person audience. And thank you for joining us tonight. We're delighted. I'm delighted to see some people in the room. Haven't seen this many people for a long time. So I'm going to kick off before we talk more about our lived experiences and the strengths that it gives us, our neurodiversity gives us, our needs and some changes we'd like to see. We're going to bring you in as an audience at that point to talk about changes you'd like to see as well. I just wanted to share a little bit about what brings me to this point of sharing my neurodiversity. So I'm quite late to the party. I discovered my autism at the age of 45, just before we went into the first lockdown. And my story is quite familiar in the Neurodiverse story. I learned of my autism through one of my wonderful children being diagnosed at the age of 7. So this is a familiar way that our generation is now starting to learn about our neurodiversity. And I'll be very honest with you, I ninjaed autism away from us, from my son, and from us as a family for a very long time because I was incredibly ill-informed about autism and was holding all sorts of fear about difference and knowing that maybe a label might limit him or limit us. And I was very misguided in that what I thought was protecting him and keeping away a sort of information about autism. And it took for me to see really the anxiety that it caused in loud, busy environments in the school environment for me to finally see that actually we needed to have a look at this. And once we started to explore it and understand it and realise that, oh, wow, that's why that happens, it was quite a short hop for me to explore my own autism and to look at it. And I did quite a dance between awareness and acceptance and back again, because having lived my life for 45 years, I thought I knew who I was. But all I can say is really embracing my autism has been massively liberating for me. And I've seen firsthand the barriers that there is around difference for all of us with neurodivergence to get information about it and to get support around it. So in embracing my acceptance of being autistic, I very much want to change the conversation about it, and I want to make environments for neurodivergent folk to thrive. So that is the topic of our conversation tonight. And I think the first thing we need to do is raise awareness. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to talk a bit more about what neurodiversity is. So if we can have the first slide up, please. Or the next one after that. So you will hear this term bandied around a lot, neurodiversity, but it basically means that our brains are wired differently in the most wonderful way. So about 15 to 20% of the population, it's guessed at the moment, is neurodivergent. So that's quite a lot of the population who communicate in a different way, they take information in a different way, they socialise and interact in a different way, and yet they need to adapt to ways that are expected of them. So it's differences in how our minds work, and the degree of that learning difference and support required will vary for every single person who's neurodivergent. Neurodiversity covers autism, which you might also hear as ASC or ASD, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, I can't even pronounce it, dyscalculia, and Tourette's. So those are some of the things that come under that umbrella. And there can also be co-occurrences. So it might be that you have one or two of these things. You can be dyslexic and ADHD, etc. So it's very different for each individual. So this is just an umbrella explanation of it. Next slide, please. So the term neurodiversity was first coined by I think she sounds like a pretty awesome woman, actually, the more I read about her. Judy Singer. She is a sociologist in Australia, and she coined the term as a way to try and include those neurominorities, the people on the fringes who are misunderstood, and to be alongside the other terms politically that we try to include in difference around race, sex, gender, gender identification. So it's a term to try and advocate. So we're all neurodiverse because each one of our brains are all different, but it's a way of bringing in the neurominorities. If we can have the next slide. And her aims were really to shift the mainstream perceptions of what neurodiversity is about, those marginalised people who are misunderstood, and to replace negative connotations of them, to look at what's wrong with them or how they're different, to look at the strengths and the needs of those people, and to show society that we all benefit from the incorporation of neurominorities. So she very much is passionate about it coming from people who have lived experiences of being neurodiverse and those people being represented. So without further ado, we're going to now, speak much more to people who have got lived experiences of it. So we're going to hear from each one of the panel. They're going to share their lived experience of their neurodivergence, to describe what it is and to share how it's, they discovered it. So Bianca, I'm going to kick off with you and ask you to share with the audience.
So I'm going to gate crash Andrea's late party, and I was diagnosed at the age of 47. So this was last November, so it's nearly a year. And it came from about 20 years, maybe a bit longer, of investigating why I felt so overwhelmed. Going to the doctors and saying, I feel utterly shit, basically. And saying I feel tired all the time. I feel quite emotional already. And not being given an answer. Being told that I was probably depressed or had anxiety. Various tests, blood tests, and sorry, there isn't an answer, try some antidepressants, have some CBT, seeing nutritionalists, sort of searching for answers, and being sort of signposted to and from different places. Some things working short term, so exclusion diets sort of gave me short-term relief. And then it's basically talking that really, really helped, just keeping the conversation open. And I'm lucky that there's neurodiversity in my extended family. So I have an auntie that worked in special needs. I have a cousin that's a therapist and she has neurodivergent children. And my dad is very similar to me. So there's a running joke in our family that my dad will leave something wherever he goes. He leaves a trail of destruction. And he'll leave his keys, his laptop, his hat, his suitcase. He'll lose his car, can't remember where he's parked it. And I'm really similar, but I didn't see the connection. My gran used to say I tripped over the pattern in the carpet. I'd go to parties and I'd spill wine down myself, or I'd, eat something and spill it down my top, or, and there'd be a joke that, don't worry, Bianca, we've got a change of clothes, or, we've got a thing of spray vanish and some plasters for when Bianca comes. And, I was sort of gently teased. But as it went on, the teasing started to get to me. And my dad used to confide in me and say, do you know what? I'm getting a bit upset by being teased about my stuff. And it was just conversations. And then my cousin, we'd have sort of family meals and there'd be discussions about difficulties we have. And then there was just a point where the conversation then went, have you thought that you might both be dyspraxic? And I looked it up and thought, yeah, maybe I am, maybe I am. I'm not very good with directions. I'm really rubbish with directions. I've got no sense of direction. My working memory's dreadful. One of the biggest things was struggling with work, organisation, sort of navigating through tasks, and that all sort of tied in sensitivity to light and sound. And so I thought, maybe I've got that, and maybe Dad has as well, and, oh well. And then moved in with my partner 9 years ago, and it was living with somebody that made me think, oh, I'm quite different. It's that quiet, not comparison, but just seeing myself next to someone, living your life along with somebody and thinking I do things really differently. And that's when I really started to think and look. And then my gorgeous cousin, who I've mentioned, Jane, sent me a message saying, this is something that's overlooked, a neurodivergent that's overlooked in women. And it was an article written in The Guardian about a woman in her late 30s diagnosed with ADHD, and it was like reading my diary. I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. It was just incredible within a millisecond. And I was cooking, and my partner came in from work and said, "Hiya, how was your day?" And I just, you know when you read your star signs and you can read anything into it? I thought, am I just looking, am I reading, you know, am I just going, yeah, that's me, just looking for answers? But it was showing it to him and him saying, no, I think you're right. And I was so lucky because I had PPI money and I paid for a private diagnosis, and within 3 weeks from having that WhatsApp message, I had a diagnosis of ADHD, and it has changed my life. You know, what can I say?
That's a wonderful story, and thank you for sharing that. And that is, Bianca and I have talked about it, that sort of recognition when you see what you've experienced in life written down. It's sort of a wonderful thing. We didn't talk about star signs, but I'm with you all the way. That's definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Bianca, and we'll hear more about that. But it's great. It's been a really positive experience for you.
Yeah, it's been life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Yeah.
I'm not mad and I'm not stupid.
Not at all. Katie, share with us about your experience of neurodiversity.
So, yeah, thank you. And thank you for inviting me, actually. I'm sat here listening and I'm feeling really humbled right now. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was very young, actually, in primary school. And so I've spent a lifetime, actually, grappling with my dyslexia. And I had a real mama bear as a mummy, and she recognised in me, characteristics, traits, behaviours that she struggled with and grappled with as a young girl as well in her life, and so that familiar kind of cycle she seemed very much playing out in me, and really fought to get it recognised and fought to get me the support that I needed, and for the school that I was in to recognise and take it seriously, because I'm actually very aware that if you're diagnosed with dyslexia today, you have to get I've got a friend who had her daughter diagnosed personally, so it's very different. It's treated very differently today, I think it's safe to say. So my dyslexia would show up in my processing, how fast I process. I'm a lot faster reading on black ink on coloured paper. When new concepts, I need the time to really digest them. The classic with dyslexia, the classic kind of getting your letters jumbled up and actually writing them back to front and things like that. So it was quite classic traits, if you like, but everybody's version type of dyslexia is different. No two cases are the same anyway. So yeah, I would always have to, I'd bring homework back home, and I'd have to do it in my way, the way in which I understood it, in my dyslexic way, if you like, and then I had to rewrite it and recreate it in a very neurotypical way that was accessible for kind of, my teachers and academic institutions. So my mum always watched me work so much harder, constantly having to overcompensate and double up really on producing work. I also, with one of kind of my first job out of university, my boss didn't know, even though I declared it in my application process, my boss didn't know until I told her 4 years in to the job. And the reason being is because any written piece of work I'd produce or report or anything like that, I'd have done days in advance. So I could go back over it with fresh eyes and make sure that it's proofread, really well. So, yeah, and so I remember her saying to me, it was a real shock for her to find out that I had. So there was always this this real drain cognitively on my cognitive energy to be able to get things done, but creatively, oh my goodness, I'm such a visual person. And so when I found out that we have different learning styles, and that's okay, to be an experiential learner or audio learner or kinesthetic learner, I was like, wow, okay, I could start to kind of place myself and work with my preferred learning styles as well, which is, is quite powerful once you discover what they are. So yeah, it's been a real journey.
And it wasn't until you were in your 20s that you started to reframe your dyslexia. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, very much so.
Picked up a book.
So I discovered a book called The Gift of Dyslexia, and a little bit like yourself, it was like the words off of the page were kind of talking to me and who I am, and it was just liberating, to say the least. And the fact that it was entitled A Gift, it was just, blew my mind a little bit, because it'd always been framed as something negative, something, a disability, a learning difficulty. The language is just so negative around it, okay? And you live that language. Language is power. And so all of a sudden, seeing it reframed and was amazing. And, I remember this book talking to me in a real way, but talking about the fact that dyslexics are quite macro thinkers.
Yeah.
Okay, they do the blue sky stuff, and then they connect the dots. And so I'm really good at networking and introducing people and seeing opportunities in connecting people and then seeing opportunities with projects, but also working cross-culturally as well. And so all of a sudden I could see how my gifts, how actually they were gifts. And so, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, that's an awesome time in my life, because I really did kind of start to rewrite the narrative.
Yeah. And
for myself.
We're going to go on to talk about strengths, but one of the things I love from my conversation with Katie is her realising that her gift of daydreaming is, helps her now to help companies to reimagine
Oh,
themselves.
absolutely, yeah. So I was always labelled a daydreamer, head in the sky, and now I get invited into organisations to do exactly that, to reimagine, right? To reimagine what their culture can be. So yeah. Absolutely.
Amazing. Thanks, Katie. James, share with us a bit about how you discovered your neurodiversity, what it is, how life's changed with it.
Sure. Stressing me out because I can see myself twice, but yeah, hopefully people can hear me. Oh, 3 times now. It's changed. Yeah, so sorry I can't be there. Obviously, today's the last day of self-isolation of COVID, so unfortunately it came a day too early, a day too early. So yeah, I'm James Dempster. I co-own and run Fox and Bear digital marketing agency in Brighton, and yeah, I had similar kind of things to the panel. Really heartwarming to hear from everyone discuss their kind of journey to where they are today. Similarly, I got diagnosed as an adult, and similar to Bianca, I kind of wasn't sure quite, I don't know how to phrase it without saying quite what was wrong with me. But the first thing that made me reach out was the first lockdown. I found incredibly hard. I was really lucky, reached out to GP who referred me to Time to Talk, which is a brilliant free NHS mental health thing that, again, massively lucky to have. And the first person I spoke to, within about 20 minutes, she said, have you considered you might be autistic? Which I was like, nope, but obviously you are, so that's cool. She said that they do a referral, but again, similar to Bianca, the referral would be sort of 18 months, which once that had planted its seed, I didn't really want to wait. So I found an organisation that would diagnose privately. I've forgotten her name now. Anne-Marie Gallagher, brilliant lady. She writes the kind of threshold for how someone can be diagnosed as autistic. So the various parameters you have to jump through to be one. Is that right? Jump through? Yeah, why not? To be an official autistic and get your badge that you get to wear, and our secret handshake as well, Andrea. So yeah, spoke to her, and as part of that journey, because obviously autism isn't something that you kind of get better at as you get older. You're born with it or you're not. So as part of the diagnosis, they had to interview my mum, both on the phone and then quite a lengthy questionnaire. And loads of stuff came out from that I just didn't know. So I could dress myself at 11 months. Now with 2 sons, I realise how early that is. And that's because I couldn't stand people touching me. And then also, which I was semi-proud of in a way, I guess, I got expelled from 2 nurseries, which Anne-Marie said she'd never seen before. So that was pretty good. Might put that on my CV. But again, not necessarily neurotypical behaviour, but I grew up in a council estate area with 2 unemployed parents. So kind of referring people for mental health help wasn't necessarily something high up on people's kind of radar at that point. So I was just a naughty boy that came out a little bit better grades than perhaps I thought. But I think that we're going to come on to strengths in a bit. But I think actually, learning and reading is something I'm pretty good at. Being tolerant and listening to annoying noises and people being too close to me or chewing is something I'm not so great at. I'm going to wrap up on 2 things. Firstly, you asked about something that maybe is affected. One of the things is timings. So I'm already stressed out because we're 12 minutes behind the schedule you gave me. But then I'm going to finish on a high because
you're keeping track.
Of course, I'm keeping track. That's one of my superpowers. But yeah, I want to finish on a positive that kind of knowing myself more. Socrates had a quote, know thyself. If you know yourself better, you can kind of make changes that are better for people. But equally, I'm incredibly lucky with where we live, because there'll be, millions of people that go through their life that don't know why they're different and how their brain works. And I've made very small changes, and I'm proud and happy that, I'm in a better place than I was 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. So, leave it there.
Thank you, James. That's brilliant. And you brought so much into that conversation around sort of, already sharing some of your strengths and how it came to you. So, I think one of the things I wanted to pick up on what James talked about is, for Bianca, myself and James, we've all paid for our assessments privately, and, we're privileged, we're in a position to do that. Not everybody is, and for many people, they have to wait for 2 or 3 years to get access to this information. That's one of the main drivers for me wanting to speak out about this. And I think all of us feel quite strongly to change the perception, but also accessibility for people to get this, because you do really have to fight. So you're seen as difficult from the get-go, and different. We're different, not difficult. So yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that point there. So what do we each love about our neurodivergence? What are the strengths? So James, you've alluded to yours, love of reading. What else? Let's just all chip in with what we love about our differences.
I like that I can, when people want to say something but they don't, I'm often wheeled out as the one that will talk. So if someone's, there was someone it winds me up, but there was a dude that FaceTimed with his phone like that the whole way from Brighton to London. So we got to Gatwick, and I just wasn't having it anymore. So I just said, do you have any headphones that you can put in? And I could see some awkwardness, but I didn't feel that awkwardness. So happy days.
Straight talking all the way. That is a brilliant thing about autism. It's just definitely saying it how it is. Brilliant. Katie, what do you love about, tell all of us.
As I've got older and the foundations are more in place, that cognitive energy that would have ordinarily gone into, fighting to understand, fighting to, comprehend the situations that I was in, or, life as it comes at you, is in place now. So that cognitive energy is almost kind of released or free to be creative, okay, and to reimagine, and that I am so grateful for now, because I know that actually we need different ways of looking at the world right now. The world needs that in a real way, because actually what's happened until this point, arguably, has got us to this point. Yeah. So I feel like I'm a part of something, and I've got something to bring to the table that might not necessarily have been kind of done in this way before.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge thing that I think that difference has got to offer, is an alternative way of seeing it.
Yeah.
Bianca, what do you love about your ADHD, your difference?
It's a tricky one. I don't feel like I love much about it at the moment, but I am getting there, and I do understand where my strengths are. Hyper-focus, OMG. Get me on something I am into and you can't stop me. So I can go for hours, days, weeks. I'm also good in a crisis, so I can think really quickly and I can whiz from one thing to another. So teaching's my job, and that's perfect for me. I can think on my feet. I can respond really quickly. Thinking outside the box. And there's an element of what James is saying. I've been told in our heads of department meetings, some people say, I really like what you have to say in meetings. It's really different. And I think, is that a compliment? But, you know, I think, yeah, so...
So speaking the things that aren't, no one else is necessarily pushing forward. And
which
saying,
I'm getting better at, yeah.
Great. Could you pop the next slide up for me? We're not going to talk through all of those, but I think generally, if you read about neurodivergence, the things that are coming to the surface and the strengths that we have to offer is creative thinking across all neurodivergence, is the sort of ability to see things in a different and novel way. Also strategic, being able to have it at the macro level that Katie talked about, being able to look at the thing overall. For me, I'm big on detail, so I spot things straight away. I have quite a freaky, amazing memory. I have this voice recognition thing. It's not an app, it's like my brain, where if I just speak to someone once and then I speak to them again, I remember their name and I remember them by the sound of their voice. It freaks people out all the time. Like, you know, different, you know, doctors, surgeries, or Specky Wren, the opticians who I speak to a lot. So that's something that I really love. And entrepreneurialism is a big thing, I think, that neurodivergent people have as well. So having to hack or having to find independent ways where they can make their way out there. Anything else that you prompted that, you know, from sharing that you can think of?
Yeah, so I started a business 2 years ago, and I'm out in the commercial wilderness, and there is nowhere else I'd rather be now. It is amazing. I feel like I found my space in which I can navigate really just in a way that suits me. I'm not answerable to anybody. I haven't got to justify my thought process or thinking process to anybody. I can do things on my own timeline, you know, so that kind of being my own boss piece is really working for me.
I think definitely I've done that as well, Katie, like designing a life by accident that just works in with my autism. So set my sort of heightened senses and tuning in on things, and I can sort of read the mood of a room or feel it, which can be difficult sometimes. But I used to think I was quite unwell when I was tuning in on things, but it is actually something that is a strength to tune in on it. So yeah, these are just some of the strengths that we offer, and other neurodivergent people will offer others. So it also has a flip side as well, and challenges. Or, you know, each one of us will have strengths and needs and challenges, but operating in a world that doesn't come naturally, and Bianca touched on it earlier, I think often neurodiversity comes in its diagnosis through a mental health challenge, or not that you necessarily had one, but that it can create mental health challenges. So I've got a slide on challenges to pop in the background, but yeah, just openly amongst us here, what challenges do you find with your neurodiversity, or operating in a world that's not necessarily, you know, naturally how you're tuned in?
Mine mostly come from, so I've been teaching for a long time. So I've been in the school I'm at now for 20 years. And I think that's one of the things that really made me want to find out what was going on is my time management and organisation. So this is quite difficult to describe, but it kind of makes me laugh. So if you give me a recipe or a list where things have to be done in a certain order, I don't know what order to do it in. It sounds bonkers, but it's true. So if I read a recipe, I'll have to read the recipe and I'll have forgotten what's at the top and I'll have to go back. I'll have to go over it and over it and over it. And sometimes I'll start in the middle. So I'll put the recipe book down and I'll start doing something and I'll go back and go, no, that wasn't the first thing I was supposed to do. I mean, it's quite comical. I'm glad I can sort of laugh at it now, but that's what I do with sort of, or did with all of my sort of organisation. I'd go into my classroom and it would be a tip, you know, the day after, and there'd be sort of stuff everywhere. And because I wouldn't know where to start, I just do bits of everything. It's just chaos. So that's a real massive thing. Self-regulation, emotional regulation is quite tricky. I feel things quite acutely. So more extreme emotional reactions to things. But interestingly, I had a lot of therapy before I knew what was the matter to try and work out what was going on. And so I've sort of managed to self-regulate a bit more and be a bit more self-aware. But yeah, there's sort of...
But the overwhelm, the sort of, I think, the tolerance levels for people with neurodiversity is different to people whose brains might process the world differently.
It's quite chaotic in their medications really helped, but it was really chaotic and couldn't think straight, have brain fog, wouldn't be able to sort of concentrate properly. I would say I don't wake up until about midday because it would take so long. It was like wading through treacle. But yeah, medication has just made such a massive difference. Yeah.
Great. Katie and James, just jump in with some of the challenges you find.
So I think it would, like I talked to you just now, cognitive draining, the tiredness, the wading through treacle sounds about right, feels about right. Yeah. The additional work. I've always been I always got, actually funny enough, at school, I always got A for effort. I might not have got A's in the other kind of, on the other measures, but always A for effort. So I'm always trying, you know, might not get me very far, but I always try really hard. And so that was always really frustrating to not have the results that in proportion with the effort. Yeah. I think that always, that would kind of get to me a lot. Until I suppose until you've kind of find your thing, and then I feel like it's taken on another, you know, another kind of speed, if you like, or a level of enjoyment. So yeah, so that cognitive. But it's interesting that you talk about the recipe, because when I was younger, I remember being in classrooms, and with dyslexia, you're very visual. It's very pictorial. So, you know, you don't, when you spell out a word, it's not phonetic. You wouldn't spell cat-a-tat. Can everybody remember those puzzles that kids, you know, babies still have, where they get the wooden shapes and they put them into the puzzle? That's pretty much when I'm spelling. That's what I'm doing. So you know, say you're just an average 3-letter word like cat, you're wading through hundreds of potential words to put into the you know, puzzle before you get the right word. Yeah. So if you imagine that cognitive drain, doing that with every time you read, every time you see a new word. But then habit comes in, you know, years of doing this, recognizing words instantaneously instead of having to do the puzzle analogy. Then it releases. I found that in later years, that energy has been released, and so instead of building the foundations, I've been able to go up and out instead.
That's really good. If I can just add in there what you've just described, I read something that said that the ADHD brain is like it's like a filing cabinet. So if your memories and information is stored in your brain in a filing cabinet, I have no filing system. And also all the things that I remember, I only remember bits of things. So it was carnage. So people would be talking to me and I'd be thinking, how am I going to answer this question? I can't find the language and I can't find... And I'm a really big film fan and I couldn't tell you the names of the films I like or the directors or, you know, I saw this amazing film. It was called... Who was in it? What's his... You know, and it would be the same thing, just trying to find the right... Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
James, tell us for you, what challenge you sort of alluded to them in your intro, annoying noises, like what other things are challenging with autism?
Yeah, I think you know, again, even though we're not neurodivergent, everyone's experience of that is going to be different. But things that really wind me up is anything where it's an unknown, particularly like if I've got a queue and it's a straight line or there's those handy little barricade bits, then fine. I'll be annoyed if there's someone too close to me or chewing. But if it's one of those chaos ones where just everyone lands on like the worst one I had was in Marrakesh. 3 planes landed exactly the same. They had no system and you just all went up to one passport check-in dude. That annoys me. I'm getting annoyed thinking about it now. So anything that I don't know what's going to happen really winds me up. So the other thing I've always hated is weddings, because again, if there's 10 people on my table and you know there's 8 I don't know, it just stresses me out because I don't know what our point of reference is going to be. Like, is there going to be anything to talk about? Am I just going to have been put on the table because I also have kids and therefore we must get on with all other parents? All of that kind of stuff. But all of that as well was really interesting because when I told my friends I'd been diagnosed, the response was quite telling. Quite a few, well, some of my mates said, they're diagnosed too much these days. Everything needs a label, which fine. Your opinion, that's fine. It's I'd say probably a third of them said, no, you're not. You know, you're too outgoing. You enjoy hanging out too much. And then kind of when I was unpicking that, actually, I didn't enjoy, and since I haven't really been out in big groups because I did it because I felt like I had to. But actually, you know, for a day or two after, I'd always be grumpy. And yes, a hangover was definitely part of that. But also just the point that it's exhausting for particularly autism to be sociable too much. You know, if so now, if I know I'm going to a wedding, again, Anne-Marie gave me some quite easy things that I can do to make life easier. If I'm going to a wedding, the day after I don't do anything. I'll read my book. I'll have a few hours by myself. I'll, you know, go for a walk, have an hour or so in a cafe without a phone or without any noise. And that's made life so much easier. But the kind of the mask that you have to wear, particularly, you know, without getting into gender and anything else, but blokes, we're shit at talking to each other. So you ask your mate how you doing. Yeah, brilliant. Liverpool won at the weekend. You know, there isn't much more depth to that, particularly in the group of mates I grew up with. So I think, you know, my pattern was you feel nervous, you don't want to be in a group, get hammered. Then you get hammered, you say more crazy things, people think you're fun to have around, and that cycle just keeps going. So now I'm probably drinking a lot less, going out a lot less, and enjoying my life more by sitting by myself reading, which I know makes me sound like a weirdo, but I prefer it.
But I think you touched on some really important points there, James. It is like the expectation of having to behave in certain ways, and the, you know, I can definitely relate to the coping mechanisms socially of, you know, alcohol that just makes the noise seem less and you know, the inhibitions go. So that's great that you touch on that because, you know, it's important for all of us to talk, men, women, you know, all of us to share it. So
For
I
sure.
think those challenges are great to share. So I've got a slide up here. You can change to the next slide and just click on through them. So these are some of the challenges faced by the neurodiverse population. So I've talked at the beginning about 15 to 20%. 1 in 10 people are neurodiverse. Neurodiverse people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed or underemployed or struggle with mental health. 90% of disabilities are invisible. So, bringing to the surface difference is really important because a lot of things can't be seen. A third of long-term unemployed are dyslexic. So the barriers to employment, the barriers in education, the barriers in health are huge. 25% of people in prison are ADHD, of 5% of the population. So it's huge, the exclusion that starts at the very beginning of life through education, systemic, neglect that then is shunted along. This is the outcome of it. People are excluded in society and, feel that they can't have a meaningful contribution. Of the 70% of autistic children who are included in mainstream school, 50% of those get excluded throughout their time, particularly at secondary school. They're pushed out of the system. So the messages that are given to people with difference and neurodivergences, they're not welcome, they're not, can't be included in these. So it's really important that we do start sharing. And for me, as a woman, I want to talk about the fact that there's a lot less known about autism and how it presents. Not everybody will identify as male or female, they'll be non-binary, but there's not enough research that goes into it. So there's 4 times as many males as females who are diagnosed as autistic. And a lot of the research that's done is on children, not on adults. So that's just some of the stats on exclusion. So the next part of our talk is about the changes we'd like to see. And as James has already pointed out, I'm slightly behind on time. So we are going to engage you as an audience on this, but this is about the digital industry specifically. So yeah, from the panel, just sort of throw out some changes you'd like to see before we engage the audience. What changes can
I think celebrating difference.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things I think we've got wrong, not just in neurodivergence, but in a lot of things, is we want to get to a point where we pretend we're all the same. We're not all the same. Everyone's different, and that's a good thing. There's loads of things that make me different. Loads of things I'm proud of, loads of things I'm not proud of, things I'm good at, things I'm crap at, and it's the same with every human. I think we need to come away from a time where we say, okay, all of us do this, all of us do that, you can't do this, you're not very good at that, and actually look at the individual and think, these are the strengths that you bring, these are the challenges that you bring, and not trying to put everyone into, we can all do X, because we can't, and that's okay.
Brilliant. I think absolutely, James, that if anything that's been brilliant through this pandemic, it is that we can adapt and we can work in different ways, and we don't all need to be the same, and success doesn't have to be this way of work hard, play hard, all of those things. So yeah, let's all create cultures where strengths and needs are very much talked about and difference is celebrated for all of us.
And it's about success not being success is measured by being successful in a capitalist society, isn't it? It's about industry, production, everybody fitting a mould that can be easily managed. But everybody being the same breeds fear of difference, and that's what's dangerous, and that's another story in a bigger conversation. But we're in a tricky place, aren't we, socially and politically, because of that as well.
So my work with organisations, there's a real move away from organisational fit, this language of kind of replicating the same, more of the same, to organisational add. Okay, so what can people bring to the table? What cognitive kind of diversity are we kind of lacking, and what cognitive diversity do we need? So I use a word intersectionality a lot as well, and so just echoing what was said there about celebrating difference. When it's acknowledging that there could be multiple identities at play as well. So. In this case, when I introduce myself, when I'm out doing my thing, I'm Katie Donovan Alakambi, I'm dual heritage, my mother's English, Irish, my father's Jamaican, I'm neurodivergent, I'm a woman, I'm proud of my womanhood and my economic status, so I talk to intersectionality because actually, this is kind of the direction we're going in, I think. You know, especially with millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Ys, they're the most diverse generations this country's seen yet. Yeah. And they know who they are.
Yeah, and
right?
I love that about them. Isn't it brilliant? And they use technology to really sort of collaborate and galvanise people towards change. So we've got to get with it, haven't we? So I think now we're going to turn to the audience. And is it online first that we're going to take questions from? Okay. Yeah. Great. Great, Amy. So yeah, questions you'd like, or you know, experiences you want to share, changes you want to see in digital and beyond. We'd love to hear from you.
Are we having the? We were going to have the people on the.
Hi, thank you for this event.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ADHD diagnosed 4 years ago as a woman, and I'm also a user experience designer, and I believe that at some point I might have met some of you before. But what I really wanted to talk about was the actual experience of using digital services as someone with ADHD, and I don't know if you'll identify with this, but our world seems to have boiled down to a series of online forms to be filled out. And personally, your analogy with the lists, and also what you were saying about knowing the duration of something and being able to predict what's happening. And I find that incredibly overwhelming, yes, but actually disabling. I cannot cope with quite a lot of life right now because it involves sitting through an unknown process and clicking on a link after link after link and remembering passwords until they're falling out of my ears.
Yeah. So. Great, that's a great point made, and I'm going to turn to Bianca to respond to that because you feel quite strongly.
I'm really passionate about it. So, having been teaching for a long time, when I started teaching, we didn't have computers in classrooms, and now it's all computer. So everything is computer led, and it drives me mad that there seems to be very little consideration for accessibility, even in a school. But in terms of my experience is the same as yours in terms of navigating online. And in fact, you reminded me, my actual diagnosis, the assessment, was filling in loads of forms.
Yeah.
And you know, my access to work, my occupational health report was filling in lots of forms, and really hilariously, my manager saying, "So Bianca, tell us what your needs are." And I'm saying, "You're asking someone with ADHD to tell you what their needs are. I might need some time." You know, it basically, we need people with neurodiversity on teams that make digital platforms. That's the only way that we can move forward, I think. The visual noise, the complexity of navigating, the complex use of language. So there's a lot of unnecessary language. Make things really simple. It's not rocket science. Put it in a text that's a decent size. Don't put it on a white background. We don't need things that flash. We don't need things that click on this, all this, all this, all this, you know. Make things really simple, because if you keep it as it is, you're excluding 10, 20% of the population. If you make it for us, you're including everybody, because everybody can access it, and it's not rocket science. Yeah, it's I've got something that I hold in mind is my partner and I celebrating the modern look on Marks and Spencer's website. We were saying, "Oh, look at their snazzy new clothes," and looking at it on an iPhone. And I said, "I can't look at it because there's a picture of a man like this, ready to chat." And it wouldn't go away. It wouldn't, you know, even simple things like that. You know, I make a joke of it, but it just makes me cross. I can't see past it.
So keeping it simple, not overwhelming
really
with too much information.
Please keep it really simple.
Great.
I've got an online question
Great,
from
thanks Amy.
Doug Pennant. What have been your best experiences with digital environments that accommodated your neurodiverse traits? The good stuff.
There's no cues.
Great, James, you can take this one. Go on, there's no cues. What else?
There's no cues. And if there is a
So
cue,
you don't have to stand the
just,
queue, you know what
you know what number you're in.
Yeah.
No, seriously though, what was the question? Good things that have been taken. I'd say the first one, it's not really an answer, but the first one is the plethora of information. You know, we've all referenced getting help and finding things that have made our lives easier. Would we have found all that without, accessible websites? Completely take on board Bianca's point, but there's a lot of good out there. And if that information wasn't as easy to find and as navigable, then, I certainly wouldn't have found so many things that have helped me. So I think we're lucky that, there's a lot of bad things about social media. There's a lot of bad things about websites, but at the same time, there's a lot of good. And I think, the platforms are only as strong as the information put into them. So, we live in a time where you can do your own desk research. You can find out more about anything that you want to find out more about.
I would echo that. I've found a sort of really helpful community on social media around autism and how it presents in women, and lots of support and solidarity out there. So, yeah, they can be very supportive environments if you find them. Katie, was there anything you wanted to add on this?
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking that, when I started out my business, I've delivered for 2 years online. I've literally created a business online from my front room. And so when I work with people and deliver, I kind of always ask what accessibility needs they have and how I can accommodate. And so, things like shorter courses have always been really helpful. What you've just described, kind of non-busy slides, non-busy presentations, non-moving parts. That's what we kind of tend to get asked for, and kind of obviously subtitles on any kind of narrative. However, from a personal perspective, again, I've really enjoyed it because, one, it's been, as a mummy of twins, it's been awesome to just be at home and be able to work and kind of look after the family. But energy-wise, keep coming back to this energy. There's I don't know, it's just eased up on the energy so I can do what I do and do it well virtually.
Yeah.
So I've quite enjoyed
that. Definitely. So being able to use technology to fit with your lifestyle, to use it to tap in, to design your work around it. A lot of people are finding that, aren't they, after COVID, that, there's more adaptability and great. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, I was just wondering, do you guys have any particular websites that you think do accessibility particularly well? Or do you guys have any favorite online features that are accessible?
I can't think of any. James, have you got any websites that you particularly
I mean, it's an intelligent question and I'm without an intelligent answer for once. No, but if you find any, send them across.
Nothing stands out.
No.
I'm going to sound really middle class and middle aged now. I quite like the Waitrose shopping app. It doesn't have any flashing or any, and it's just easy and convenient. But no, I can't think of any groundbreaking websites that.
But you're saying that it's easy.
It's easy to use and it's quite straightforward.
I'm still trying to process Bianca's comment that there are snazzy clothes on the Marks and Spencer website. I'm still.
Come on, I'm wearing them right now.
I like the word snazzy. We don't use it enough.
No. Amy, any other questions online that you want to?
What I will say though, in response, if the ideal scenario would be, I think, or the ideal sort of vision of a website or accessible digital information, I don't know if it is sort of tenuously related, is at school what I've learned through my diagnosis is how to present information. There's a lot of online content that we provide for students and just making sure it's really, really straightforward. And also what I've learned is I used to do bullet points, but actually what ADHD students really like is numbers. So they can see it in a certain order, and to have fewer instructions in bigger text on more slides rather than, because I used to try and cram it all into one, thinking I was being efficient somehow, and actually it's not. They much prefer it, even though it sort of seems more complex, that there's more of it to go through. So I don't know if that applies itself to a sort of ideal, you know, website or how content could be presented.
We've just had a very handy link put on the chat from Atif Chowdhury, which is a free resources website for neurodivergency. So we will share that.
Great.
Somehow.
Thank you, Atif. Much
With
appreciated.
some technology. We've also got one more question from Stephanie. Oh, James, could you please name the person, organisation that you saw for diagnosis again, please?
Yeah, her name's Anne-Marie Gallagher. She's in Scotland but sees anyone. If you bear with me 1 second, I'll tell you her website. Oh, connect to August. Oh, whoa, that was close mispronunciation. Connect to autism.org.
Great. Any other questions from the audience or any other comments about changes you'd like to see in digital environments?
Hello.
Hi.
Mine is more as a comment, I think, which is, I think it's impossible to imagine spaces for neurodivergent people to thrive without talking about a wider disability justice movement and solidarity between different disabilities. Because I think the interesting thing about disability is across all the different differences that there are in the world, this one is very closely related to labor and to work, and things like that. And another privilege that maybe some people hold is not having to rely on benefits and talking about design of things and how things are designed. This is a system that has been revised to make it more and more inaccessible year after year. It's like designed to prevent people from accessing resources.
A brilliant point, absolutely brilliant. And so it is about coming together and speaking out about that as, you know, communities, whether it's neurodivergence or other things that could be disabling, and to make things more accessible and easier rather than them be designed by people and excluding others. Is that the point that you wanted to get to change, the change you want to see? The mic's gone,
Yeah, that, but also I think the acknowledgement that the world is really hostile to people with disabilities, and I don't think it will be a welcoming environment or an environment for disabled people to thrive if that is not acknowledged in a space or I think that was my main point.
Brilliant, thank you.
So is it about getting to a place where, I think Kate was talking about this earlier, where it's not seen as a difference that is designed for? Is that what you're saying? And it's more of we're sort of naturally more inclusive, is?
It's difficult, I guess, because the thing with inclusivity at times is who is being included and who is being excluded, because somebody always is. So, sorry, what was your question?
I think we're batting questions. I was just trying to clarify what your point was. And
well, I think if you are set out to create an environment for people to thrive, you should be open and acknowledging
Yeah.
all the struggles that are happening. You should not just like pink wash it. You should make it real and not be afraid to talk about it as well.
Yes, brilliant.
Which is why these conversations are really important.
They're very important. I've learned a new thing tonight. Pink wash, wow. Greenwashing, I know, pink washing, but that's great. And thank you for making that point. It is, the struggles need to be seen as well as celebrating the strengths, and they have to be talked about openly in order for people to thrive. The struggles need to be seen. The invisible needs to be made visible.
I find though, Andrea, as well, the burden is usually on us.
Yes.
Okay, to create understanding in the environments that we, in the spaces that we take up. But actually, I think moving forward, what we'll absolutely see in the future with the kind of the movement around equality and diversity is that this idea of cross-cultural competency, cross-cultural literacy across the protected characteristics isn't just the responsibility of the person with the characteristic.
Yes.
Okay, it's all of our responsibility.
Yeah.
So what we'll see in the future, and it's really important to be mindful of this as parents, if you've got children, is that along with kind of negotiation, teamwork, communication skills, when we are out in industry, when we are applying for jobs, that cross-cultural competency is going to be assessed as well as those other things. Yeah. So we need to be able to demonstrate that we can exist within diverse teams, diverse communities and diverse societies.
Yeah, brilliant. I welcome that completely. So it is about being able to take a wider perspective and considering other people outside of yourself, and it being the first port of call, not expecting them to speak up.
It would be really good to get into a place talking about the burden. So I've just, over the last few weeks, been introducing my diagnosis to people at work, and they're people that I've worked with for, the best part of 20 years. And it's been hard for me to say it, and it's been received in mixed ways. But the general thing has been a blanket kind of, and then the conversation's kind of stopped. And I'm trying to work out why I feel put out by it. Is it my ego? Is it, what is it? And actually, I'm just really kind of bemused that there's no curiosity. Is it lack of curiosity? Is it fear of saying the wrong thing?
Yeah.
And so it stopped me from talking about it. But the point of me saying it is I wanted to start a conversation about it. But the conversation, it has to be a dialogue. There's no point it being a monologue.
Completely. I think to have a shift to happen, you've got to create cultures where asking is something that's just, it's part of it. It's not seen as something that's wrong or you don't ask. Guess cultures where you have to navigate or feel your way around. The change is never going to come from that place.
It'd be so great for someone to go, what's it like?
Yeah.
What's it like? How are you feeling today? How's your brain fog?
Yeah. Be curious about it. Ask questions. What's that like for you? Anything that
you've lost the remote control again. It's me at school with the kids. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions got one more there.
Just to carry on, actually, from the point you made earlier about other disabled groups. So I work with people with very complex neurological conditions, so they often can't communicate, progressed MS, that kind of thing, and have worked in web design for a long time and just trying to keep it a bit more digital focused. Often, I think you said it yourself, if things are simple, then they're accessible to everyone. Yeah. So what I find is that in the golden days of web design in the early 2000s, we could make websites very accessible very easily to all sorts of people with assistive devices. They could, change the fonts to dyslexic fonts, do whatever they want. As we've seen commercialism take over the web industry, what we've seen is an increasing complexity, futility for most of the features, and that accessibility has become nothing but tokenism. There is no accessibility left. So I know there's a strong movement within Brighton, within the digital community, for less is more. And I'd really, really like to enforce the idea that serves not just ourselves and neurodivergence, but almost every type of disability you can imagine.
Brilliant. Thank you for making that point.
Absolutely. And the conversation is then, how do we make it happen? And do we come back to, we were talking earlier about how there are companies in Brighton, there's companies everywhere, but there's one in Brighton I've been signposted to called ability.net, who will, if you contact them, they will advise you on how to make your digital platform or technology accessible. But my question about that is, that needs to be paid for, and can we be in a position where it's almost mandatory for teams to be managed by a group of people that include people with disabilities, so that it. Yeah. But it just becomes, it's a mandatory thing.
It's a representation. Yeah.
I've got one more from Doug. We're all in online meetings these days. What can people do to better accommodate the neurodiverse in digital meetings?
Oh, less meetings, less talking, I would say. Just like...
And can we go back to the phone now and again? Why do we have to see each other on every single call? Can't we just have the odd phone call?
Yeah, absolutely. So just less of having to sort of talk and be present. And I find talking sort of can be really draining all the time, but it's just that information overload. Anyone else got a different view rather than just less meetings? Because it's been great for you, Katie, hasn't it?
I spent 4 hours delivering a virtual training session before I got on the train to Brighton this morning. So it's a different ball game for me, if I'm honest. I'm doing it daily. Like I say, I try and accommodate, but I don't know. Actually, what this is a reason for me is that I'm actually really quite hard on myself.
Yes.
So when we're talking about adaptations and ways in which we can make life easier, I'm thinking, I probably could. Because I preach it. I preach that other people should do that and be kind to themselves. But I kind of just do this push thing. So that's what this is raising for me right now.
So you feeling easier on yourself. So just to go back to Doug's question, I suppose it is just about understanding that the energy required by someone with neurodiversity to constantly be on and constantly taking in information and constantly responding, it's a lot. So just ask what people need. I would say just keep it simple.
Yeah, I was about to say something very similar, because I was working on a project and there were like a few neurodivergent people on the team.
Yeah.
And we made a point every time we were having, because we were based all around the UK, and we made a point every time we were doing a Zoom meeting to start with how's just a very quick 1 minute check-in. How's everybody feeling today? What's your energy level? And based on that, we would say, okay, should we just say that this is a 20 minutes meeting? Or if everybody's feeling really energetic today, can we afford to spend more time on this and just really try to push this project forward? Because some days people were like, I'm sorry, I've been very brain foggy. I can't do this today. So let's just
about it. So. And when you make it when you normalise questioning, checking in, how are people feeling? At my son's school, so since my son's been diagnosed with autism, he's able to understand his needs much better. And he says quite simply in the classroom, I need a brain break. So he will just say to the teacher, I need a brain break. And he'll go and maybe go outside, run around, or he's got space at the back, or he'll doodle, he'll draw. But I would just love for all of us to say, we need a brain break, just to be able to, to share that and it to be okay, that actually, there's a tiredness happening.
Something else to bear in mind about the online meetings, I have a lot of them. We now do parents' evening online, which is going to stay, and I'm really disappointed. And nobody will hear it, it's now it's all online. But there's nuances, so body language and tone, and there's stuff that's lost on a screen, and I think communication, I'm worried about how much is lost really through that, especially if you are neurodivergent, you don't necessarily read.
Yeah.
You need the whole person to read the situation really, and to get the full picture. So that's a bit of a worry.
Hi. I always like to go back to practical, easy to change steps. So I thought I'd bring up dark mode on your phone and on websites, because I thought it was a fad for quite a long time, and I was like, oh, everyone's into dark mode, I'm not doing dark mode. And then I changed my phone recently to dark mode, and it was such a game changer. And I have dyslexia and pretty confident undiagnosed ADHD. And I just wondered if you guys have ever considered dark mode, or
I
if
have
anyone else
never heard
uses
of it. I'm doing that later.
It basically, changes your screen. Everything
Yeah.
is darker, and then it's got the white text as the background, and it's such a simple thing that really actually made a huge difference to me. And a lot of apps have dark mode as well.
Great.
Yeah, so just I thought a practical step that might help.
Any
some
of you
people.
use that?
I've tried it, and I'll try it again, because I tried it and it was, the difference was too much to get used to. I thought, I don't like that, it's different, but it's about trying it and sticking with it. So thank you. Yeah,
Great. That's a
absolutely.
great tip. I always love to learn about technology because I've turned into a right old.
So the dark mode doesn't work for me, but I went on a training course that I participated in a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me what my needs were before I attended. And I said, well, if you do have anything printed out, just if you could do it on colour paper, that'd be easier. And when I got there, I was presented with these plastic coloured sheets that are reusable, that I can put over any kind of document, and I've never seen them before. I've never even come across them before, and I know it was just really small, but it was lovely. I really appreciated the effort that went into it.
And you can do that on screens as well, can't you? You can change the colour. You can put a filter on your screen.
Yeah. So now I have these different coloured sheets that I can just have in my bag and take anywhere. And
Great.
Yeah.
But the fact you were asked as well, Katie,
Yeah.
before you went, I mean,
Yeah.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, conscious of time,
I've got
James,
one more. Just a comment. Just a
Go.
comment.
It's okay. If you're all saying we can have another.
I just wanted to thank the panel for their honesty and vulnerability in sharing their lived experiences. I've learnt so much from this talk, and have lots to think about in making my business a welcoming space for neurodiverse folk.
Brilliant.
Big up, Charla.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's great to hear that it's been useful. So I'm just going to ask the panel to each share a couple of words to sum up this evening. So either changes you're going to put in place or what you've made of tonight. Yeah, just a couple of words to check out.
It's a really.
I don't mind going first.
Oh.
Sorry, James. I was looking over there.
It's all right.
Go on.
There's a delay.
There was
I stick with the one I said quite early on, but let's celebrate difference.
Yeah, and I love that, and that's fantastic. Thank you, James.
Yeah. It's been interesting for me because a lot of the work that I do is centred on equality and diversity through a race lens, or economic status. It's not necessarily focused on my dyslexia, actually. And so I was a bit nervous about this evening. I didn't know whether I'd be triggered, because there's a lot of unresolved stuff, from my childhood around stigma, judgment, and all those kind of things that I had to navigate. So I'm relieved that I got through it. But yeah, just I know this. We've had this conversation about the use of the word superpower, and that it can be irritating for some, but it really is. And when you find your strengths and your skills, and you can utilize them to build a balanced lifestyle for yourself. Yeah. That's what I've had the luxury and privilege of being able to do with mine. Yeah. So,
Katie, thank you for sharing that. The fact that you thought you would be triggered and you were here. And I think for each one of the panel, I don't think any of us have really shared this with an audience before. So thank you for doing that to each one of you. And you've done brilliantly in it, and you've contributed so much. So I thank you, Katie. That's brilliant. Bianca, what would you like to...
I'm really appreciating on my journey being in contact with other neurodivergent people, in real life and online, but particularly in real life. It's amazing how connected you feel quite quickly, I think, and how to be able to speak really openly.
Yeah. It's a relief, isn't it?
In a safe place.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant, and we've done that, and it's for all of us. It's been wonderful to share it and to bring this in. So my closing words, thank you, Bianca, are that, in order, I love the point that you made about, creating environments for people to thrive. First of all, it's got to be about opening it up and allowing the struggles to be seen, allowing the difficulties to come to the surface, making the invisible visible. So it's got to start from a cultural point of view of making it okay to be different, making it okay to ask questions. And, you know, for all of us, when you share people's strengths and needs, you know, whether you're neurodivergent or not, it makes the environment much more able for everyone to thrive. So, yeah, I thank each one of my panel tonight, all of us for coming. Thank you to James for joining us with COVID, no less, on screen. Thank you, James. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, cross-stitch. Do you want to show your cross-stitch? No. Come on.
Yeah, I do.
James wants to show.
Who wants to see a massive cross-stitched Zeus?
Come on.
Yeah, you do.
Wow. Yay! Big applause for James sharing that new special skill. Thank you, James. Thank you to Katie for joining us tonight, for coming from Bristol. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. Thank you to Bianca for adding so much. Thank you to our online audience for coming along to join us. We're going to say goodbye to them now. Goodbye, lots of names on the screen. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your participation. And thank you to you in this audience. Also, thanks to Brighton Digital Festival for giving us this space. We're really grateful to you for bringing this topic to the surface. Thank you to me, from Amy to Amy Osborne, who helped to bring this whole panel together. She did.